Welcome back to True Echo, the channel where real stories echo louder than fiction. Today's tale will grip your heart and challenge your assumptions. When a young black boy quietly checks into a 5-star resort, he's humiliated and dragged out, not because of anything he did, but because of how he looked. But just when things seem hopeless, his mother walks in. What happens next is justice, served ice cold. Stay with us. You won't believe how it ends. Wellington Crest Academy didn't advertise itself as elite, it didn't need to. The name alone summoned images of legacies, ivy-covered walls, and surnames that opened boardroom doors. Every hallway smelled of wealth, ambition, and a carefully curated superiority. And in the middle of that prestige sat Tariq Carter, a quiet, deliberate 12-year-old with skin the color of deep walnut and a presence that stood firmer than the polished floors under his shoes. Tariq wasn't like the others. He didn't arrive in sleek Bentleys or German SUVs. His mother dropped him off in a modest sedan, always early, always with a kiss to the forehead and a whispered, "Make them see you." And he did. Not with loud antics or entitlement, but with sharp answers, straight posture, and a calm that unnerved people who thrived on chaos. That particular morning in literature class, the silence cracked when Tariq raised his hand to dissect a metaphor in To Kill a Mockingbird. His analysis was clean and insightful. Even Mrs. Welling, the silver-haired instructor known for her disdain for interruptions, offered a rare nod of approval. But across the room, Camille Whitmore smirked and scoffed so loud the room shuddered. "Didn't know they let the help sit in the front now," she muttered, her voice bright enough to cut glass, her friends stifling giggles like loyal courtiers. Tariq didn't react. He had learned the rule early: survive by being still, seen only on his terms. He looked down at his notebook, carefully turning a page. He knew her type. Camille's father owned half the skyline, including the chain of 5-star resorts where celebrities stayed and staff were trained to bow deeper than the rugs beneath them. But it wasn't over. "This place is for people who belong," Camille hissed as she brushed past him after class. "Don't get comfortable." Tariq simply stood and walked on, his silence more powerful than any comeback. Because while she laughed, he knew something she didn't. Her world was built on assumed power. His on earned resilience. And that weekend, those worlds were about to collide, hard. Solaria Resort glistened like a polished diamond on the coast. Its name whispered exclusivity. Marble fountains danced near manicured palms, and the air smelled like orchids and opulence. Camille sat at her usual terrace table, scolding the staff between dainty bites of overpriced pastries. Everything annoyed her: the lighting, the texture of her eggs, the lack of truffle oil on her omelette. The chaos of her entitlement was symphonic. Staff moved like chess pieces under siege. Camille thrived in this space, she was royalty in a world her father had built. Until she saw him. Through the glass, in the grand lobby, walking calmly toward the front desk with his hands clasped in front of him, Tariq Carter. No parents. No chauffeur. Just him. In a navy-collared shirt and composed as ever. Camille's fork clanged against her plate. She stood so abruptly she knocked over a dish of preserves. "What is he doing here?" she muttered, heels echoing through the marble hallway as she stormed toward the lobby. Tariq turned slowly as she approached, recognizing her voice before her face. She launched into her attack like it was a scripted scene in a courtroom drama. "This is a 5-star resort, not a community center," she spat. "What are you doing here? Lost?" He remained still. "My mother booked a suite. I'm checking in." "Oh please," Camille rolled her eyes. "What does she do? Work in housekeeping?" Before the receptionist could confirm anything, Camille demanded security. Her voice rose, drawing attention. Other guests looked up. Her confidence was so sharp, no one questioned it, until the doors opened. And in walked Amelia Carter. Amelia Carter didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to run, or rush, or shout. Her presence alone shifted the entire atmosphere of the Solaria Resort lobby the moment she stepped through the doors. Dressed in a tailored slate gray suit, a sleek leather briefcase in one hand and calm authority in the other, she moved with purpose, not urgency. But her eyes, sharp, focused, burning, locked instantly onto one thing, her son, and the man gripping his arm. The click of her heels echoed like a countdown. The front desk, the lounge, even the concierge paused mid-task. Richard Whitmore's hand still held Tariq's forearm in a firm grip when Amelia spoke. "Take your hand off my son." Silence blanketed the lobby. Richard turned, his grip releasing instinctively, his lips parting as recognition dawned too late. "Mrs. Carter, he stammered. But Amelia didn't slow. She approached like a closing verdict, each word measured like a gavel strike. "You physically removed my son from a resort I own," she said, pulling a badge from her bag and holding it up for all to see. "Amelia Carter. Chief Executive Officer. Carter Legacy Hotels." Gasps. Not whispers. Gasps. Tariq stepped beside his mother, safe now but unreadable. Camille froze, her earlier venom melting under the weight of her mistake. Richard looked as if the marble floor had split beneath him. Amelia didn't blink. "Monica," she said to the receptionist with a cool kindness, "please confirm, is there a reservation for the Carter suite?" Monica, pale and trembling, nodded rapidly. "Yes ma'am. Executive tier. Reserved under your name. Early arrival flagged for Tariq Carter." "Thank you." Amelia turned back to Richard, her voice now slicing clean. "You didn't check the system. You didn't ask his name. You judged him by the color of his skin and by your assumptions. That is unacceptable." Richard opened his mouth to plead. "It was a misunderstanding." "No," Amelia cut him off. "It was a decision. One you've made before. But this time, it ends here." Then she turned, to Camille. Camille hadn't moved. Her usual confident stance had folded into something small, uncertain. She looked at her father for backup, but Richard was no longer her shield, he was a man unraveling by the second. "I didn't touch him," she said defensively, her voice cracking. He looked like he didn't belong, okay? He was probably lying." Amelia tilted her head slightly, not out of confusion, but out of controlled disappointment. Her tone changed, not softer, but lower, deadlier. "You may not have laid hands on my son, Camille, but what you did was far worse. You humiliated him in public. You tried to weaponize your father's position. You lied. And you did all of it because in your mind, someone who looks like him doesn't deserve luxury." Camille's mouth opened to protest again, but she hesitated, realizing she had no script for what happens when the world no longer played along. Amelia turned her focus to the assistant general manager who had arrived in the background, eyes wide, unsure whether to intervene. Her voice was now executive steel. "Effective immediately, Richard Whitmore is relieved of his duties. Escort him off the premises. His access to systems is to be revoked. A termination letter will follow, and a civil complaint for the unlawful physical removal of a registered guest will be filed within 48 hours. You could hear a pin drop. Richard stumbled backward. "Wait, Amelia, we go way back. I'm not here for nostalgia, Richard. I'm here for accountability. Escort him out." Security moved in. This time, it was Richard who was gently guided toward the exit. Camille stood frozen, helpless as her father was led away in front of dozens of staff and guests. The control she once flaunted had vanished, replaced by a silent, public reckoning. Amelia turned to Tariq, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "Let's go check in, baby." As they walked toward the elevator, the entire lobby parted like the Red Sea, not from fear, but from awe. The child they had dismissed had been seen, defended, and proven right, without raising a single voice. The elevator ride to the top floor was quiet. Not awkward, peaceful. Amelia stood beside her son with quiet poise, the way she always had, her strength now no longer invisible. Tariq looked ahead, but from the corner of his eye, he saw his mother's reflection in the polished elevator doors. Still. Steady. Unshaken. When the doors opened to the Carter suite, floor-to-ceiling windows, fresh orchids, marble accents, and a panoramic view of the ocean, Tariq stepped in slowly. But instead of collapsing with emotion or joy, he simply walked to the window and looked out. Amelia closed the door behind them and set down her briefcase. Then she sat on the edge of the chaise lounge and said gently, "You okay?" Tariq nodded. "I didn't cry. I didn't yell." "No. You didn't. I didn't want them to win." Amelia's expression softened, but her eyes gleamed with restrained fire. They never stood a chance. And he believed her. Not because she had fired anyone. But because she had walked into a room filled with power, prejudice, and judgment, and made them all bow to truth. Not for a show. Not for vengeance. But for justice. Outside the suite, word traveled fast. Staff whispered in back hallways. Guests exchanged theories over cocktails. Videos had been taken. Audio was already being clipped and circulated. Some saw it as corporate discipline. Others saw it as poetic. But to a few, especially the workers who had long felt invisible, it was something else entirely, validation. That evening, while the sun dipped into the ocean and painted the lobby with golden light, Monica, now holding her chin higher than ever, received a message from upper management. She had been recommended for a promotion. Her composure under pressure, her record of professionalism, and her honest report of the incident had made an impression that wouldn't be forgotten. In the staff lounge, a group of housekeepers replayed the moment Amelia had said, "You didn't need to know who he was. You only needed to know that he was a child." And one of them whispered, "About time someone said it out loud." The fallout from that day didn't stay confined to the walls of the Solaria resort. Within 24 hours, Richard Whitmore's name had vanished from the internal directory of Carter Legacy Hotels. His email access was revoked. His biography scrubbed from the company website. The press release was brief, sterile, and final, effective immediately. "Mr. Whitmore has been relieved of his duties due to conduct inconsistent with the values of our organization." But behind the clean phrasing was a tidal wave. Richard's industry contacts turned cold. Meetings were quietly cancelled. Speaking engagements evaporated. Rumors swirled, and the security footage, which had found its way onto social media, left no room for spin. The internet had no patience for subtle racism caught on tape, especially when the mother in the story owned the building. Camille's world collapsed faster. Her father's removal meant no more private tuition, no corporate housing, no chauffeured rides to school in luxury sedans. She was quietly asked not to return to Wellington Crest. The administration, once overly accommodating to her whims, now treated her like a liability. Her friends didn't laugh anymore when she mocked others. They avoided her completely, afraid of guilt by association. She packed her things in silence. No apology. No tearful reflection. Just a quiet dread she couldn't articulate, because for the first time in her life, she was the one being judged before she could speak. At her new public school, Camille sat in the front office holding a registration folder, her designer handbag replaced with a worn canvas tote. Her name meant nothing there. Her last name didn't echo in the hallways, and when the administrator asked if she'd been homeschooled before, she didn't correct them. She had learned something, though she wouldn't admit it aloud. Power based on perception crumbles faster than truth built on resilience. Meanwhile, Tariq returned to Wellington Crest the following Monday as if nothing had happened. He said nothing about the weekend. He didn't gloat. He didn't sneer. Even when his classmates gave him looks that were different now, not mocking, but reverent, he remained the same. But something in the air had shifted. This time, when he raised his hand in class, no one scoffed. By the end of the semester, Tariq Carter had done more than survive Wellington Crest, he had risen. His teachers noted his quiet leadership, his maturity beyond years. Invitations came, a leadership summit for gifted youth, a scholarship offer for a summer mentorship at Stanford, and an editorial opportunity for the school's ethics journal. But Tariq wasn't chasing prestige. He was building something deeper, presence. When asked in a one-on-one interview for the mentorship program how he'd handled adversity, Tariq didn't name names. He didn't reference Camille, or the resort, or even the moment his mother turned a lobby into a courtroom. He said, calmly, I just wanted to be seen for who I really am. Amelia Carter never broadcasted what happened either. She didn't post statements or wave the banner of justice online. But within Carter Legacy Hotels, a quiet but powerful transformation had begun. Bias training wasn't just implemented, it was prioritized. Internal policy was overhauled. Employee evaluations included dignity metrics. Promotions considered not just service records, but empathy in leadership. Monica was made floor supervisor within 2 weeks and had a mentor assigned by Amelia herself. Not because she bowed to power, but because she chose truth over comfort. As for Camille, she never apologized. But life did what apologies often can't, it revealed the cost of unearned arrogance. Over time, stripped of status, her world forced her to see people not as scenery, but as equals. And while she never found the words to say, I was wrong, she did something close. One afternoon, 6 months later, at a citywide youth leadership event, she saw Tariq again, now standing at the podium, receiving a leadership award from the mayor. She didn't approach him. She didn't interrupt. But as he walked by, she nodded. Just once. Tariq didn't stop. He just kept walking. Calm. Dignified. Because for him, justice had already been served, not in the humiliation of his enemies, but in the dignity he never lost. And for every adult who had watched from the sidelines, who had silently asked whether this time might be different, it was. It finally was. In a world where assumptions can strip away dignity before a word is spoken, this story reminds us of one profound truth: real power is not inherited, it is earned through integrity. As Amelia Carter once said, you didn't need to know who he was. You only needed to know he was a child. If this story moved you, we invite you to subscribe to True Echo, where real stories still matter. Share this with someone who needs to see what courage looks like in silence. And tell us in the comments, have you ever witnessed someone stand up without ever raising their voice?